Hi there. Welcome back, or welcome to Recovering Out Loud podcast, the show where we get real about addiction and mental health recovery. I'm so glad you're here. If you or someone you love is struggling with drugs or alcohol, please reach out to me on any social media platform at Recovering Out Loud Pod or by email at recoveringoutloudpod@gmail.com. Enjoy the show. By the way, do you go by Ben?
You can save the syllables if you want. I'm actually Benjamin Lerner because there's like a poet, like he's a pretty big cheese. His name's Ben Lerner, like Pulitzer Prizes and all that. So I do the Benjamin for my platform, so to not step on his stuff. But you can call me Ben if you want. It's all good.
It's funny when I was Googling you and looking up more of your songs today, which are great, by the way. I really appreciate recovery rap. I know you don't get offended by that, but like,
nah, I celebrate it.
Yeah, it's not really a thing, right? Like I haven't really found it other than you, and it's what you're doing is amazing, man. I love the music. Like I vibe to it in my car. It's not just good lyrics. It's actually, I vibe to it. You know, it's good music, man. So keep doing what you're doing. I love it.
Thank you.
I love it. But yeah, Ben, thanks so much for coming down, man. But yeah, to touch on my earlier point, when I Googled your name, what I was getting at is that guy came up, that poet. And I was like, well, you're basically a poet. So,
it's really cool. Like I've read his stuff. It's very interesting. It's very scholarly. It's very powerful. But me and my producer, we wanted to make it clear that it's a different thing. So we did the full name. But if you want to call me Ben, my nickname's Skinny. You can just call me random real beanie hat man. Like that's what some people will say in other comments. They're like, oh, like I follow you and the long haired guy with the hat. And I'm like, that's me, long hair hat guy. So whatever works.
But you probably, I'm going to assume this because I haven't met you before recovery, but you probably didn't always look this good. You probably always didn't look healthy. You're, no stranger to opiates and drugs. And you talk about that openly. That's a huge problem right now in North America, especially in the United States. And you're from Vermont. So why don't you talk about a little bit about your story and how you came into recovery?
Yeah. So forgive my cheesy millennial reference, but the Spark Notes version used to be this site where you could instead of reading a book before Chat GPT and Grok and all that, you could Google the Spark Notes shortcut of the book to pass your test. So the Spark Notes version is, I do live in Vermont now, but if my atrocious mid-Atlantic accent isn't enough of a giveaway, I wasn't born this close to the northern border. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. I'm the son of two Ivy League educated journalists. I'm not a billionaire, but I have a little bit of a history of privilege in my family. My great-grandfather was a Russian immigrant-born American composer named Irving Berlin. He wrote God Bless America, White Christmas. And I'm not saying that to flex like any family ancestry, just to give context that addiction doesn't discriminate in terms of where you come from. I know people from the projects and trailer parks who now own million-dollar businesses because they got their life right in recovery. And I know people who grew up in houses that dwarfed my nice suburban house growing up. And all it got them is a nicer box when the fentanyl took them out. But the best way I can describe it is that I was an alcoholic and addict before I ever took my first drink, because I was always fixated on an external solution to help me navigate or just kind of kick the metaphoric can down the road of my internal problems. And before, the drink ever hit my mouth or the needle ever hit my vein, I found solace and temporary gratification through approval from other people. For other shameless millennial references, it was Pogs, Pokemon cards, Digimon cards, N64, and PlayStation games. Just fixated on collecting things, collecting approval and attaboys from other people. And so by the time, I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder at the time, they called it Asperger's early on. So I had these kind of hyperfixations, which kind of primed the pump for the self-soothing, self-stimming stuff that, I had little sips of alcohol here and there. But when I was 13 years old, even though I had a sip of wine, sip of beer at my parents' dinner party or sneaking out of the fridge out of curiosity, I don't consider those my first drinks or first use because I didn't know what it was doing. For me, I consider my first drink when I knew the effect that alcohol gave me because it made me feel a little euphoric. And then I consciously sought that out. And that was when I was like 13, 14. I don't really remember the age. It was like 7th or 8th grade, but I'll never forget the day because I was over at my friend's house, like playing video games as a sleepover. And we got the brilliant idea that we were going to steal liquor from his parents' cabinet, but the bottles were too far down. And I think they might have even been marked because he had an older sister in high school and his parents were trying to like make sure she didn't do that. But we found this musty, disgusting 6-pack of Sam Adams in the basement. And it had like mold and cobwebs on the like tops of the bottles. And we both popped one and he took one sip and he practically spat it out. I was like, this is disgusting. But me being an alcoholic, I downed that lukewarm, moldy beer. And it was like when you go on an airplane and your ears pop, it was like just the whole weight, anxiety, like self-centered fear just immediately evaporated. But it came at a price. And the price is that over the next 10 years, over my active use, it escalated very quickly. And it went from suburban things like me showing up late to a piano recital or a track meet to me crashing my car, dropping out of school, escalating from drinking and cannabis to coke, Molly, and then eventually crossing every line I thought I wouldn't cross. I had all these delusions because I went to private school. I grew up in a certain way that, like, because the surroundings were glamorous, I was slowly desensitized into escalating my use. And honestly, trying to emulate this fake persona I did, because it wasn't just that like I was numbing and mollifying my internal anxiety through the chemicals. They actually became my identity. Because as an awkward, lanky, autistic kid, I was insecure and I didn't think people wanted me to be part of their community. And part of that was delusional self-hatred, but part of it was also just anxiety and like an identity crisis about not knowing who I was. But when I had the beer and the bag of weed in my hand, I wasn't just able to change consciousness. I was able to be that guy, that it was a material extension of my worth. So it was two problems. First and foremost was me self-medicating, but second was that I didn't know who I was without the props of having like the bottle and the bag in my hand. The same way people wouldn't want to hang out with me at a sleepover when I was young, so I'd bring the GameCube games or the PlayStation 2 games, and they wouldn't want to hang out with me, but I'd have that. So the party favors became that. And, I stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from my family, and I crashed my car after a 6-month-long bender, stealing my college fund money and lying to my friends saying I was this suburban, uptown trap star when really I was sneaking into my mom's purse to steal checks. But it all came to a crashing halt when I slammed my car hydroplaning into 3 other cars when I was 20 years old in 2012. But when the cops pulled up and this whole scene, carnage, wrecked cars, thank God nobody was hurt. The only thing I cared about was when they put the cuffs on me and breathalyzed me because I was hungover and kind of still drunk. It wasn't, is anybody else okay? Like my parents were going to find out I stole like a couple $100,000 from them. It's like, I'm not going to be able to drink and use today. That's all I cared about. I was a selfish, just self-destructive person. And then at that point, the only line I thought I wouldn't cross was like prescriptions because, I was like snorting a ball of Coke a day. I was drinking a fifth of whiskey, but I was an uptown Coke dealer. I was a high bottom, low bottom alcoholic. But once I got prescribed perks for my dental surgery, that little moment of the pop and the decompression with the beer in my friend's basement was magnified 100 times. And alcohol is a very blunt and crude instrument. It activates a lot of different neurotransmitter sites. But that opioids, that endorphin, and that dopamine, it just took me, man. And it wasn't suburban anymore after that. I went days without eating, pawning everything that I had, going down to the Tenderloin out in San Francisco where I had re-enrolled in art school because my family wanted me to succeed. And all the fantasies I had of being this like suburban Scarface character turned real quick into something a lot less glamorous, and me crossing every line, smoking Roxy's off a foil, shooting dope, shooting fentanyl, smoking crack, picking cigarettes out the gutter, lancing abscesses with blunt needles, passing out in movie theaters. I never got Narcan, but I would wake up blue in the face, my whole body falling asleep, tingling, security guards shaking me awake, passing out on my friends' couches, them trying to revive me. And all that said, I still justified all those escalating consequences by the fact that at that point, the funny thing is, my parents at this point were sending me in and out of rehab, staging interventions of a small magnitude. But the sad thing is, they only thought that I was high when I was in withdrawal because I was agitated, I was sweating, and I was all like the stereotypes of an addict when I didn't have my dope. But when I did, I was kind, I was courteous, I was stealing from them, but to the face, I was very well adjusted. And so they would only ever confront me when I was dope sick. And they would try to get me to go to treatment, and I'd agree just to placate them, but I didn't really want to get sober. Having a seizure with my father at the hospital bed out in Frisco, and them having to load me up with Ativan to stop a dyskinetic seizure, me biting my tongue and like asphyxiating and all that didn't do it. Friends dying didn't do it. Crashing my car didn't do it. What made me want to get sober is when I went up to New York and I copped a bundle of Fetty Lace dope and I shot 3 bags, and I didn't get high. I got physically high, but I didn't get spiritually or emotionally high. And that was scary to me because all consequences aside, I still live with the delusion that an external chemical solution could solve my problem. But that's the point that I went to treatment, and I called the treatment center with the needle in my arm. I had been to inpatient before, outpatient countless times, but just to placate other people. But when it got to the point that I had hit a wall, like when you're slamming multiple bags of Fetty Lace dope and like chiefing grams of crack, like within an hour, like there's no further escalation that you can go from that. So I had to seek out another solution. And that's the point I was finally beaten into a state of reason. And I went there for myself. And that day was June 13th, 2016. And by the grace of God, or whatever word or understanding works for y'all, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same to me. I've been clean sober ever since.
Amazing, man. I resonated with a lot there. I truly, I hadn't thought about this in a while, but yeah, it's like I got to a point where the drugs stopped working, right? They stopped providing their purpose, which was, you said it perfectly, using outside things. I'm paraphrasing, but using outside things to fix my insides, whether it was love from you, attaboys. That was a big one for me, like noticing me, loving me, whatever that looked like. And, it wasn't until, I went to treatment. I've been to 3, and every time I went there, it was for my parents, for my wife, just to get them off my back. Right. And I knew I had a problem, but I wasn't going for myself. It wasn't until I really stayed and did the work and started taking some direction from people where it's like, Anthony, maybe your way's not the right way. Maybe you're wrong about how to get sober. Maybe you're wrong about a lot of things. And that open-mindedness and willingness to kind of like, actually, I need to do this for myself because I'm going to die and I'm not happy, right? The drugs, like there is no more solution anymore to my problem because the drugs and alcohol stopped working. Was there a moment in that treatment center, that final one, where you kind of flipped to do it for yourself? Like, do you remember what that moment looked like where you said, I'm going to do this thing for real now?
Yeah. So before I left, I knew that I wanted to do it for myself. But when I got there, I made a stupid decision, which is addiction transfers separate from chemicals, I fully believe. And regardless of if you run out of dope, but there's like a liquor store, even if liquor ain't your thing, like I knew sometimes like to fend off the shakes or the seizures, like off benzos or dope, even though that was my thing, I didn't even like drinking at the end. I would go grab a 5th of whiskey and just start chugging it, even if it made me sick, just to do something else. And so in treatment, there were no substances, but there were people. And so I selfishly made the move of attaching myself to another person, hooking up with her. And she was going through a lot of stuff too. Was like a really cool person, but like I selfishly took her being interested in me because we were both broken people looking for a distraction. And I made her my new addiction. And we only hooked up once, but like, I attached my whole identity and recovery onto another person. And so when she stopped talking to me because someone spread like a rumor that I had like an STD out of whatever, like rehab drama or whatever, I packed my bags and I wanted to leave. Because at that point I had detoxed. I was chemically sober. I kicked, like they did a 3-day Suboxone taper. It was excruciating. I was throwing up, sweating, like nodding out, not even from being high, just being like my whole neurotransmitters were depleted. It was agony, but I got through that. But poetically, when I got through that is when she stopped talking to me, and I had a detox process emotionally and spiritually that, even though it wasn't as physically painful, was like I was really alone and with myself. I didn't have an external thing that I could. And so I called my family and I was like, I can't do this. And it wasn't about the chemical detox. It was about the spiritual and emotional detox. And so I was sitting in the room. I had called a cab. I had conned my family into saying, I'm going to go to another treatment center.
Oh my God.
But really what I was planning to do was the commuter train from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania to Philadelphia. I said I was going to take a train to Philly from Lancaster and then back to DC to go to treatment and like meet my family there. But what I was really going to do is go to Kensington and Philly and take the 300 they sent me for a train ticket and like go cop a couple bundles and check out. Because a lot of kids there were Kensington kids, and they told me about the blocks to go to and everything. And that was my plan. It wasn't necessarily suicidal, but I was just like, whatever happens, happens. Like, I'm going to Kensington. I'm buying a bunch of bags. I know my tolerance is low. And because I knew I couldn't keep using, because eventually it was going to get to the point it didn't work. And I thought I couldn't live life sober. So I'm sitting in this room with this counselor, and she's giving me this whole half-lidded, like, I'm like, I'm going to another treatment center. This isn't just the right fit for me. Like, and she's just like, yeah, tell me more. Like, I'm the first person who's ever against medical advice left. But then I see a mirror, right? It might not even been like a mirror. It might have been like a metallic surface or something, but I saw my reflection clear as day. And at the time I had scabs from picking off of the itching from the opioids and like staying up for multiple days, smoking crack. I had bags under my eyes. Even though I was 24, I'm 33 now, make these look like nothing. It was bad. I looked like a 40-year-old career hardened addict. I had a scruffy beard like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. I wasn't looking good. But funnily enough, when I looked at myself there, I didn't see me then. I saw the same scared, insecure child that used to hide under the table with my hands over my ears as an autistic 4-year-old in the Toys R Us because the whole world felt like it was screaming at me. The kid whose parents got divorced. The kid who had that beer in the basement. And then it kind of all flashed and I saw like, it's going to take more work for me to keep running from this than it is for me to run towards the truth and the pain. And it was not just literally running, like taking the cab and going to Kensington. I'm like, no, it's not even the drugs. It's not even anything like that. It's like, you're afraid of your reflection. It's not the withdrawal. It's not romantic disappointment. Like, yeah, all that's powerful, but you're afraid of yourself. And no matter where you go, even if you pass away, like you are going to be there. Like it's still going to be you. So you have to face this. And so I canceled the cab, and after that, it wasn't just about like chemical sobriety, like beautiful things happen in there. Like the day I decided to stay, the person who had been running like the cafeteria program, like they appoint certain people, in the center who are patients to like serve food to people and wake up at 6 a.m. instead of 7 or 8 to like go and like help serve the food, cook the food, plate the food. And I started doing that breakfast, lunch, and dinner whenever they let me. I started allowing myself to be of service, not just like in any recovery group or anything, because they had groups and stuff, but it was just like, can I help clean? Can I help do this? And I found that by getting out of myself, in the beginning it was a distraction, but it was a sense of purpose bigger than just staying sober, like finding ways to apply principles of recovery towards my life. And so I think that's the moment where I'm not going to say I got everything, because there were a lot of experiences I had after that where whether it was relationships or personal setbacks, like I wanted to give it up, where a series of serendipitous miracles put me towards people who helped me through it. When I fell, even though I didn't go back to using, like I came close, but that was the first moment where I had an epiphany that it was up to me to do the work. And more than that it was a privilege to do that, because the life I would be afforded by doing that work was better than what the bag could give me.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. And I couldn't help but laugh there because I hadn't talked to somebody yet that I did the exact same thing. I was fed up with the treatment center I was in, this past January. And they weren't doing things my way, right? Like they weren't, their things weren't going according to Anthony's plan. And I was like, I've been to 2 treatment centers that were better than this one. And, don't you know, I was trying to run the whole place, right? The actor that they talk about, trying to be the director and the actor trying to do everything, arrange the lights, right? Sweep the floor. I was trying to be that guy. And, don't you know, you're not living according to Anthony's plan. And, it could be better here. And I had the exact same situation where I sat down with a counselor and he just looked at me and he was doing the whole like, yeah, you're going to go to another treatment center, a better one. Yeah. That's what you're going to do? Okay. He wasn't saying that, but he was clearly, communicating it with his face. And I actually did end up leaving that treatment center. And I'll never forget this. I went home, I started looking for another treatment center, and I called my therapist. I don't know why. And again, this is why I believe in God, spirituality, higher power, whatever you want to call it, like you said. Something a thought came into my head, much like what happened with you, where I had this kind of epiphany where I was like, my therapist is in sobriety and recovery, and I just had this thought to FaceTime her. I don't know why, I hadn't thought about her in a while, and I FaceTimed her and I told her my plan, my idea. Right. And I found this to be so helpful in recovery today. I always try to tell people that this is what helps me the most, is reaching out and like sharing your ideas with people. Like, here's my plan. Here's what I could do. Cause I didn't do that when I relapsed after 8 years. That's what took me out, was having this plan and for me, it was getting into performance enhancing drugs, right? Not mind altering, not, all this like, BS in my head that I was spinning, this justification. I can get a prescription from a doctor, so it's all good. I wasn't telling people about my plans. And that's what ultimately took me back out, right? I didn't run things by people. I just acted on my will and and that's what got me in here in the first place. I forgot that that's what got me into the hotel rooms by myself, smoking meth, snorting, whatever the hell I was doing with people I shouldn't have been around. I wasn't telling people my ideas, my plans. So this time I called her, and she right away, she listened to me and she just goes, Anthony, like, you have to go back to that treatment center, right? And she said it in a not so nice way, but she knows me by now. I needed that tough love, right? You need to get your effing ass back there. And I thought about it. I prayed about it because that's what I was taught to do, right? I asked for help, and, I went back that night. I called the treatment center and I said, hey, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Like, I shouldn't have done that. And I apologize for my actions, right? I kind of lost it on some people too. I kept it pretty calm, but can I come back? And they took me back that next day, right? I went to a recovery group that night. And funny enough, actually, one of the guys at that meeting that stood up and talked, he ended up coming into the treatment center that night that I went back there, and I saw him and I was like, holy, I did one of these where I just kind of looked up and I was like, okay, I get it. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Thanks, buddy. And, those moments happen in my life all the time. I just have to notice them, right? I have to notice these little God shots, God winks, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, it's not easy. It's, and to your point, it's like life wasn't perfect after that, but I always think like, if you had taken that train, if you had acted on that will, you might not be sitting here today, right? Like, who knows, right? We don't know. And that's the thing. When we pick up, like, people are like, oh, I know what's going to happen. I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, I've never used a needle. I have used a needle, but I haven't used a needle to shoot opiates yet. Right. I always say that it's like, if I close this call today and go, I always say this, if I close this and say bye to you and go back out there and start drinking again, all bets are off, dude. Like, I don't know what's going to happen next. Right. Because I'm an addict and an alcoholic, and one is too many and thousands never enough. I always want more. I don't know how to stop. I don't have an off button. So it's not even worth testing it today,
Yeah, of course. And, the addictive impulse for me isn't necessarily just tied to a chemical. I think that regardless of whether my relapse is chemical, of course, that's going to have the most devastating consequences. It's going to reset the clock. It's going to do all kinds of like internal neurological damage. And, the way that I get down, I'm probably going to be sitting under a stone. But separate from that, I think that regardless of what phase in recovery you're at, and regardless of what delusions get you back to that place of turning to whatever destructive solution it is, I can completely destroy my life today in ways that have nothing to do with chemicals. I mean, I'm a father of two. I work a fairly demanding job in addition to the content and like the other stuff that I do. And, I can just walk around salty and just self-destructive all day. And it just like under the surface, like there's some people who say all relapses are premeditated. And I think some are kind of spur of the moment, but regardless of like the amount of premeditation that goes into anything, there's always something bubbling underneath the surface.
Absolutely.
And so I still get cravings from time to time. Over the past few years, it's gotten a little better in terms of the chemical cravings. I don't know what it is. Might just be that because like, I'm working a lot and I have kids, like I don't really have time to even like think that much about that. But in terms of the anger piece, in terms of the resentment piece, in terms of like the self-centered fear piece today, it's like, yeah, I might not be going out there and drinking or using, but like the same wreckage can happen real quick if I'm not willing to just take the same action that I did in that treatment center in a different way. Because the insidious thing about it is I can think, well, I don't have a craving to use today, so that must mean I'm doing pretty well. That must mean I'm a pretty hot potato, man. And then I'll be like yelling at my fiance in front of my kids, like storming out of the door and just like doing all of this stuff. And because I'm sober, I think, oh yeah, well, I'm justified in this. But see, the sad thing about that is that can open the door for other things. So for me today, it's like that same motivation always has to be, like you say, ask for help. And the other day I was talking to a person who's very near and dear to me in my recovery. He's also a father of two. He's a little further along than me. And he said something very powerful because, my whole house was a mess, literally, because I hadn't been there taking care of my kids. I had been selfish, working a long time, not being there. And I tried to justify it. And I was tired as heck, just picking up all the toys, being salty that I had to do it. And he's like, it's one thing to trust that things are going to be okay when it's not a mess. It's another thing entirely to trust that the solution works when you're in the process of picking up the wreckage. And he's like, yeah, good for you. You're 9 years sober, one day at a time. But it sounds like your life's still a mess. And it sounds like maybe you have to have a little bit of the same, even if it's forced, and you have to just kind of blindly do it and fake it till you make it, humility here. Because it sounds like even though you're not using, you're hitting some jackpots and you're destroying your life pretty good. And that's a wake-up call to me, man, because it's like, yeah, I got a different life now, sure, from the outside. And because I was never a functional addict, shout out to the people who can do that, man. I was never that. I couldn't hold down a job.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to glorify that, but I just couldn't do it. And so all these things happened in my recovery. And so I think all these delusional things, but at the end of the day, whether it's a drink, whether it's a shot of dope, whether it's, a line, a pill, whatever, that's one piece. But then the next level is, how can I actually better my life, not just in terms of the toys and prizes and external elements, but keep myself actually grounded and grateful so I can be present. And so that's the battle I'm fighting now, man. And it's one day at a time, just like recovery is.
Yeah, man, it was well said. Yeah, I agree. It's like, just because I'm sober doesn't mean my life is good or perfect, right? I still have bottoms in recovery, as my friends remind me. What does, you mentioned gratitude there at the end. What does I get these gratitude cries every once in a while where I just like, it happens a lot when I'm listening to music, and I'll be listening to a song and it'll remind me of a time, camping with my dad or something, or, usually classic rock, because that's what we listen to a lot. And, I'll just have this moment where I'm just so grateful. I start tearing up. And what does gratitude look like to you when you're practicing a good, solid recovery program?
I'm going to say that one of the most beautiful moments that I had, and I think this also goes to show the strength of the overall recovery community, not just for people in recovery, but also people who embrace and promote recovery. Mm-hmm. I was on a business trip and I was listening to one of my favorite artists that, even though he's not 100% sober, really goes out of his way to represent for recovery. And he is in recovery from his drug of choice. But he's not completely sober. And some people give him flack for that, but that's kind of the whole point of where I'm going to get to in this. And that's Jelly Roll. I was listening to, Whitsit Chapel, all the like more spiritual songs like She and Save Me and all that. And I was like breaking down crying because again, I'm sober. I'm on this business trip with this international nonprofit organization doing like content consultation, like just wild stuff, hotel boardroom conference dinners. It's like, dude, I used to use the same needle like 20 times over a week. Like what's good with this? But I'm breaking down because I'm away from my family. I'm away from my recovery resources, and everybody on my team is very supportive of my recovery. But I just don't have a minute to myself. It's just work, 3 hours of sleep every night because we're putting everything together. And so I break down and start crying, like you say, listening to this music. And then I go home, and that's the week that his new album drops. And I'm trying to get back with my family. I'm trying to like get back right with myself, get back right with my recovery community, balance my life out. And at this point, my youngest son is like 9 months old. My older son is like 2.5 almost. And they wake up at like 5, 6 a.m. and I got a whole big day of work. And we're out of eggs and milk. And my girl makes some pancakes every morning. And she's like, you need to go to the store. And I'm just angry, just beyond like salty, just dragging my feet to the car. And then I'm like, oh, the new Jelly Roll album came out today. So I put on the first song of it, which is Winning Streak. And the chorus is like, I was so afraid to be in this seat till I met a man who was 20 years clean. He said, everybody here's felt the same defeat. Nobody walks through these doors on a winning streak. Mm. And it makes me cry just thinking about it, man, because I drove to the store and that line played like the second chorus before I pulled up in front of my house, and it had nothing to do with getting sober. But I was so defeated and I was so disappointed in myself and not being there for my family and emotionally sober that when I walked through the door with those eggs and that milk, I was just like, this is a time for me to do this over. Like it had nothing to do with, I was just like so disappointed in myself and what I was not being there for my family. And it felt like I was walking through the door of the treatment center again. Oh. And I felt so inspired by that, that I saw that people were like making these videos hating on Jelly Roll. Oh, he's not sober. Oh, he's a sellout. Oh, he's Hollywood this and he's that. And then as a person who is 9 years sober, hearing that song, which had nothing to do with like a relapse, but just me being so down in my recovery, feeling like I was so worthless. I felt so seen and I felt so heard going through there. So after I made up with my kids and my girl and gave them a big hug and apologized, broke down, started crying kind of like I am now, I made a reel about how, this guy's doing amazing things. Like, he's doing beautiful stuff for recovery. We need to support all paths of recovery, all this stuff. And I thought nothing of it. I went about my day and I put my phone down and I was really trying to be there for my kids. And what ended up happening is that Jelly Roll saw that post and on the day his album dropped, and he said to me, I'm crying right now. Wow. In a comment on TikTok, I feel seen and I feel heard. Wow. And the full circle moment thing about that, man, is I was at a point where I was breaking down and I was feeling like I was worthless. And so this person who's inspired me countless times doesn't know me, doesn't know my story. He's got his own demons, his own path to recovery, whatever. But the point is, regardless of where you are, whether you're like, a dad working like, a middle-class job, driving to get milk for his kids, or you're a country star who's selling out arenas, when we tell the truth and we leave a door open for self-improvement and emotional vulnerability, we can be seen and we can be heard. So every single time that I feel like I'm not grateful, I'm alone, I'm down on myself, and I feel like my recovery is trash and I feel like I'm undeserving of where I am, I get that imposter syndrome. It's not about the cloud of that post or anything. It was just a moment where I was at my lowest and I put on a message, separate from a song, a message of recovery and hope and new beginnings. And I realized that new beginning could happen for me. And then seeing someone who I think, oh, he's selling out arenas, millions of records, like American Idol judge and all that. But it's clear he was going through some stuff on the day his album released. So that lets me know it doesn't matter if you're a millionaire, you're one of the most beloved, famous people in the world, or you're just a dad getting milk and eggs. We are all in this, and no matter how much money, clout, fame you have, You are one moment away from an emotional breakdown, but you're also one moment away from gratitude and self-improvement. So whenever I get down, it's like, what's the jelly roll moment today? What's the moment where instead of being salty that I got to go balance my work and my family and my recovery, I can be like, this is a gift. This is a gift, having the balance, looking my son in the eye and being present, then like going on email and work, uploading a reel, like all this stuff. This is a gift that I get to do this, man. This isn't, it might be exhausting. It might be ridiculously taxing, but it's good work. It's good tired. It's good pain. And that's something that if I never got sober, I never would have experienced. The revelation that the very same painful, vulnerable, cringing, incredibly agonizing moments of transparency are what's going to not just keep us sober, but keep us grateful. And I got to plug in this charger, but I'm just going to say.
You're good.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a moment for me where I was just like, what are you doing, man? Like, where's the gratitude? What is it?
Yeah. I love that. And that shift from I have to do this to I get to do this today, right? It's so subtle, but it's sometimes it could be powerful too, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing, man. I want to talk about music, but first I want to talk about like, how did you end up getting into social media and spreading the word of recovery? I think it's so important because there's a lot of crap and garbage on social media and dangerous messages and misinformation, but there's also a lot of hope, man. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of people doing really important things, spreading the message. And, like you said, is you never know when you're going to get seen by the right person or the person that needs to hear you, or heard by the person that needs to hear you. How did you transition from, into social media and posting reels and helping others that way?
So when I was 2 years sober, I was working towards my goal of becoming a drug counselor. And I made music for years in active addiction, mostly glamorizing addiction. I worked with a lot of figures that I'm very privileged to have worked with in active addiction, like Project Pat, Mac Miller, may he rest in peace. Before he blew up, I did a track with him. And, when he died in 2018, that really spurred me to get back to writing, but I was just doing it for me. I wasn't really uploading. I was uploading on SoundCloud, but I wasn't even really posting on my Facebook because I didn't want people to see. It was literally just for me. And I was working in the service industry, paying my way through college to be a drug counselor. And I had this moment at the treatment center that saved my life. And I want to make it clear, where I was running these peer recovery groups there, but I wasn't a clinician. And at the end of one of the groups where I would bring speakers into these clinical settings, this kid who had been rolling his eyes the whole time came up to me and he confronted me. He's like, hey man, I don't want to be sober because it seems like all you guys talk about is recovery, blah, blah, blah. And he reminded me of myself 3 years before I was actually ready to get sober. And I was having a hard day. So I just kicked it on. I was like, listen, man, I know you just really leveling with him because he was doing perks and Adderall, in the low key in a way that I had been right at the very beginning when, and I hit him with truth and I didn't sugarcoat it. I cursed. I used the names of actual substances, not the clinical names. I used addict instead of substance use disorder. But at the end of it, he's like, dude, I don't know if this is okay, but I want to, can I get your number? I actually want to talk to you about this, man. Can we get lunch or something? Once I'm done with this, I know, I'm like, yeah, bro, here you go. Let's do it. And I did end up going with him to a recovery group and all that stuff down the line. But the counselor accosted me and she's like, you can't do that. And I was like, oh, no, I can't get lunch. But she's like, no, not that. You can't use the word addict. You can't use street names of drugs. You can't be that confrontational. That's unprofessional. And I wanted to scream at them this kid was rolling his eyes through the institutional language and all this stuff, right? I was talking to him man to man, addict to addict. And this is what's making him want to do this. But I didn't say that. I was like, okay. And I bit my tongue. And I kept working there for 3 months, but I was just so disillusioned about it because I was like, I can't be me. I can't say what I want to say. And that inspired me more to get into my music. And then 3 months later, I was up in Vermont because my dad built a house up here, a little cabin in the 70s, and he gave it to me after I got sober. And I was working on fixing it up with the eventual aim of moving up here to be a drug counselor. But then I didn't even know if I wanted to do that, even though I was still in school. Long story short, a friend of a friend came up to my house in Vermont with an old piano, heard one of the first piano rap tracks that I've been putting together about recovery. He's like, dude, I know this guy who's just built a studio here in Vermont. You should really meet him. So I meet with the guy who owns the studio. I play him the song. And it turns out he's not just a producer. He's also a doctor, Broadway producer and doctor, who has been sitting in on, this back in 2018, community forums at the beginning of the fentanyl crisis about community action that could be taken to raise awareness about fighting the epidemic. But since he wasn't an addict, he didn't know how to reach people through that way. But he wanted to give back philanthropically, like help people. So he met me, he heard my music, he heard my story, and he asked me a question that changed everything. He said, do you think you can reach more people by speaking honestly and through your music or through an institutional setting? And I was already thinking that I couldn't do that. And I was like, through music. And he's like, why don't you come back up here? I want to buy the rights to one of your songs. Like, we'll do a one-off thing. And if it works, like, and I was just stoked because, like, he paid me to perform. It was my dream to be a professional musician. And we started doing these songs together. And he was buying the rights to the songs. And I was stoked on that. But 4 songs in, I was like, dude, like, this is a good partnership. Like, we got to split this 50-50 here on out if you want to keep working with me. And I was expecting to be like, nah, like whatever. But what he said was, no, we don't just need to do that. You need to move up here full time. I'm going to get an arts residency going for you. And we're going to do this album. We're going to do this work. And so I packed all my stuff. I moved to Vermont. Everybody in my recovery group told me I was crazy. They said I was giving everything up, but I prayed about it and I knew it was right. So I moved up here. We did the album Clean, the piano rap album. But then the pandemic happened and all the tour stuff he was setting up fell through. And I started working at the magazines he also owned as a journalist, another opportunity of recovery, because at that time, like, live shows were shut down and we were still working on music, but it was a hiatus. And then I met the woman who's now the fiance and the mother of my kids. I settled down and I got to another point where I was like, the same way in recovery, I don't care if I never do music again. I got a son, I got a job, like I got a life. But then one night, my son was 5 months old, and my girl couldn't sleep while she was nursing him and like all this stuff, and she's scrolling through reels on her phone. And at this point, I've done like community programs before and after the pandemic over Zoom, like prevention summits. I've started writing a column about recovery. I've started doing an FM radio show about recovery. But I don't know anything about social media. I've seen a couple reels come across my feed, but they're not recovery related. And then I'm like, and she's got all these trending audio things going through her phone. And me, the millennial, she's 9 years younger than me. She's 25 now, and I'm 33, about to be 34. And I'm like, what's that? She's like, oh, it's reels. And I was like, what are those? And she shows me these reels of like all these moms taking care of their kids and all these fitness influencers because she likes to run and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. She's like, yeah, you should make these about recovery. And I'm like, oh, I can't do that. Nobody's want to hear that. And the crazy thing is the algorithm listens to what you say on your phone. And over the next couple weeks, I started seeing reels from Jimmy McGill, Brad from Sober Motivation, Rachel Elizabeth, Quinn Lapierre, the Cali Sober creator. And it just magically shows up. And I'm like, wait, people are doing this? And I was 6.5 years sober. And I was like, wait, I can really do this. So I bought a phone and I got permission from my team. And I just started recording. And at first I was like trying to make it like other people. And I was like trying to be exactly the same. And like a couple things were catching, some things weren't. And then I realized like, dude, you shouldn't make yourself work for this. You should make this work for you. If it's not going to naturally work, it's not going to work. So instead of trying to stage it, make it all like professional, like whatever studio, like high quality, whatever, I just started grabbing my phone, taking my dog on walks around my block and sharing moments in my recovery where I was tested and what helped me get through it. And the only rules I applied to it were, is it true? Would it help me in early recovery or would it help me in active addiction? And when I gave up on trying to make it cool, when I gave up on trying to make it streamlined, when I just did one take, threw a filter on it, threw some captions on it and just hit post, that's when it actually got some momentum. And I attribute that to the fact that, you know, clout and influence and money and, you know, status is an addiction just as much as a substance ever was. It takes it back to like when I said it wasn't just about the substance numbing me, it was that it became my identity. And so when I finally was like, I don't care about followers, I don't care about none of this, let's just put the message out and let's do it. That's when it started connecting me with people. And I, more than any numbers, whatever, I became part of this community that you're part of as well, that so many great people are part of, where hopefully, whether it reaches 1 million people or 100 people, we're just sharing what we know and doing our best to be there for people in the way that they were there for us on the other side off of the phone, but using social media and the fact we could be open about recovery through this to put it out there.
Oh man. Well, I needed to hear that. Thank you. It's so true. Like, I'm struggling recently with chasing the followers, chasing the likes, chasing the clout. And, I can easily tell myself that I'm doing it for the right reason. And, I got into this ultimately, and I truly do know this and believe this, the podcast, but also social media, to stay sober myself, right? Like that was goal number one. I need to surround myself with recovery, because if I'm not sober, I can't help anybody. I can't do anything. I can't be a husband. I can't be a son. I can't be a brother. I can't do any of these things if I'm not sober. So that was my rule number one. And I love that you said that you kind of, you stick with 3 rules, right? Is it true? Yeah, 100%. That's important. Like I can't be fabricating some of my stories or glorifying anything, or just straight up lying, because I lied every day, every second of every day when I was in active addiction, and I can still lie today. I still struggle with that, right? So am I being authentic today? That's because that's what's gonna help that one person that we're thinking about, because to your point, when I came in, somebody was authentic to me. Somebody was kind to me. And that's what kept me around, kept me calling that person and asking for help, because I wanted what they had. And they always said to me, I always say this, it's like, son, if you want what I have, here's what I did. You can do it or not do it. It's up to you. There's suggestions, right? And ultimately, I'm grateful that I followed those suggestions today. So yeah, I needed to hear that.
I need to hear it too. I can get so caught up because it's like a rush when you see there's been so many podcasts about it's a dopamine hit. You know what I mean? And I'm a creator. It's inherent in the phrase. There's a J. Cole line from, Fire Squad off 2014 Forest Hills Drive. At the end of the day, every poet just wants to be loved. And so I'm not going to fake, like, I don't want people to like what I'm doing. I don't care. Of course I care. I'm creating something, whether it's a talk reel or a song. Of course I like it. But that reality, that admission that, yes, I do like views or positive feedback. Yeah. That can't be the aim. That's the best. I acknowledge that motivation is there. It's not going to magically disappear. But can we extricate ourselves from that and make stuff that's not driven by that?
Yeah, the driving force. That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Yeah, it can't be the North Star, right? It can't be the driving force. I mean, outcomes. I'm very focused on outcomes when I'm not in the best place, and I'm not, I always say spiritually on the beam or working a program of recovery. I'm focusing on outcomes, and I have expectations. And you mentioned it before, but expectations just lead to resentments, right? Because again, you're not living according to Anthony's script. And if it was done this way, if everyone just listened to me, life would be better, right? And that's led me to so many dark paths before. What's one of your favorite lines that you rap about, or because there's so many good ones, man. And I was trying to look up your lyrics before to find them, but they're not anywhere. So I just figured I would ask you instead, because there was a lot that hit me where I was like, damn, like that was really well said. But if you had to think of a line that you were really either proud of, or even a song that you're proud of, or something that you really helped you, what would that be?
I think the 3 verses that I think music is recreation when it's good. So I try not to make it a meritocracy, and I'm not going to big up myself by saying, oh, like this is bar, like, It is what it is. I mean, some of my favorite rappers don't have any bars. They just have charisma and they got good delivery. Some are the opposite. They don't have any flow, but like their words hit. And sometimes they're not even deep. They're just funny, or there's no grading system. Lists are fun, like whatever. I just need to remind myself of that, because what I like isn't necessarily what other people relate to. I've been surprised, like people say things and I'm like, oh, that's corny. I don't like that bar. But then they're like, that, I'm damn
Yeah.
near want to get that tattooed on me. People, I'm like, whoa, that's awesome. But like, it's very particular. I would say that the three songs
Subjective.
that mean the most to me are Scars off of Clean, Price of Addiction, my song with Matt Keegan, means a lot to me. And
Yeah, I like
Not Stopping off of my first EP after Clean means a lot to me. The reason those three songs mean the most to me is Scars is something I actually wrote that verse when I was 3 months sober, and I never intended it to be a rap because it was about when someone saw one of my track mark scars at work and asked about it, and I had to be honest with them, and I decided to be honest. When I was working as a busboy. Price of Addiction, I wrote that verse at 3 a.m. after putting my baby back to sleep when I couldn't sleep, when Matt had sent me the original, like, raw version of the beat. And I was trying to make it all these things, but I was just like, what would you want someone to say if they were giving you tough love about, like, what would await if you went back? And I'm not gonna say I freestyled it, but I wrote it in 15 minutes. I wasn't sure Matt was gonna like it. I just sent it to him, and it is what it is on the song. And Not Stopping means a lot to me because I was at a place where I was recording a lot of verses for social media. It wasn't clear whether my team was gonna let me make them into songs. I was starting to get a lot of hate for recovery being the omnipresent thing in my music. And, the person who inspired me the most, I mean, of course, Eminem, Royce da 5'9", Jelly Roll, yeah, but Kalichi, more than anybody, is my number one inspiration as a artist in recovery. And that was the song that connected me with him. That was the verse where when I dropped the raw version, he reached out to me, and it was kind of a beautiful thing because I didn't plan it. All three of those verses were written through. I didn't think about them. I just penned them almost freestyle style, and they've ended up being kind of the most significant things that have opened my life up. But more than that, just reminded me that it's all about being present when you write something rather than having a concerted aim, and kind of in the same way as in recovery, if I can get out of my own way, cool stuff can happen. Kind of the best laid plans don't always amount to something. And so more than like the bars, because there's some things where like my favorite line of anything that I've ever done personally, just because I like hip hop and it's so multi-layered, is on Not Stopping. It's because when the M boxes and H turn to pine boxes, too many friends pass like Nash and John Stockton. Like that's the one, like when it came out, I was just like, okay, that's something that like, if I was in active addiction, I would have been like, okay, that's hip hop. So I'm happy with that. And a lot of people have, gassed me about that or whatever. They're like, oh, I never heard like a recovery line like that. And I'm like, well, we've all lived it. So whether it rhymes or not, or it puts metaphors together in like a clever way or whatever, sure. But the challenge I did with that is how can I encapsulate losing friends in the evolution of the opioid epidemic from pills to fentanyl and like in one line. And that's, to me, is whether it's talk content or music, it's like, yeah, you can have bars, you can have good delivery, you can look in the camera the right way, have a good angle, have a good mix, like, sure, but is it true and is it going to help people? And we won't know that until it goes out. But usually if it helps us by saying it or rapping or singing it, then there's a better chance that it's going to help somebody. And that's how I try to run my game.
Yeah. I love it, man. Well, you've helped me today. Honestly, it's been a great conversation so far, and I appreciate it.
Likewise, bro. Thank you.
On. I want to end with this. If you could say something to a struggling artist, creator, whether they're getting started or they don't know if they want to do this full time yet, or maybe they're struggling with drugs and alcohol as well. what would you say to that person?
Well, I actually have a song I'm working on. And what's funny is I was going to click on my notes to like try to search it and find it. And this is Provenance. It's literally right there. I didn't expect, I was just working on it like yesterday. And I don't know if this song is ever going to come out. My team probably won't let me do it because they want me to do more melodic stuff moving forward after this next recovery EP. But this is what I'd say to them. If you have a story and a potent truth, you don't need a budget or the dopest booth. You just need to trust that what you're going through is something other people understand that's truly overdue for sharing, even when the algorithm's looking over you. Because even if some people don't acknowledge while they're scrolling through, even if you have to start from scratch and start over a few more iterations, modern attention spans have limitations. Don't let your zone of creation fold to intimidation. You don't need a filming crew and you don't need a selfie stand to actualize your vision. You just need to develop a plan. Never let your insecurity limit creative growth. If you have knowledge, channel it through your content and make it known. And if you're only in it for the fame or the clout, take it back to the basics and then reframe what you're about and ask yourself, when the money and the hype disappears, will your content inspire people to fight through their fears?
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
I love it.
It was
man.
interesting that was like right there.
I mean,
that I was working on because
I know that encapsulated the whole episode.
I hope
really.
so. I mean,
oh man,
listen,
I hope that comes out.
What I would say, separate from that indulgent millennial recovery boy verse, is if you have a crappy, prepaid gas station Android phone with low pixels, and you have a crappy looking apartment. Yeah, it might not look like a Rachel Elizabeth or Sober Motivation video. Shout out to them. It might not look like a Brandon Novak video. Shout out to him. But it's gonna look like the phones and apartments of a lot of other people who are actually in early recovery going through the struggle. And even if the algorithm doesn't prioritize you, it's not just about honesty in what you say. You don't need to save up for like a dope iPhone or like Galaxy to like have good content. You don't have to have perfectly color synced stuff. You can use stock Facebook, YouTube shorts, Instagram, TikTok fonts, not even correct the captions, not even place them, not even have perfect bordering or like camera placement. If what you're saying is true and it comes from the heart, even if you don't have anything to say and you're just like, 353 days sober today. Like, I got a job today. Like, one of the most powerful videos I've seen that went mega viral and it made me so happy to see it is a girl wasn't even saying anything. And the girl wasn't even talking about being strong in recovery. She had her phone on and she was crying with a trending audio of Honest Abe, I'd rather overdose. And she said, I'm driving around in my car crying, trying to get through the cravings so that I can be there for my kids and not go back. And it got tens of millions of views. And it didn't come from it being a pretty camera. It was a horrible camera, horrible angle, horrible content sync. But it was real. And God bless her for doing that, man. Because that's the type of content the world needs. It's not polished. It's not professional. It's real. It's resonant. And it's saving people's lives. Pick up the camera. Don't let anybody else hating. Don't let your own voice hating. If you have something to share, pick up the phone, hit post, and let the chips fall. You have no idea how many people want to hear you. None. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. One of my favorite people, and he's an author too, but producer Rick Rubin, he has an amazing book called The Creative Way or Creative Act or something. And he always goes back to, art, creation, art. It's not for the audience. It's for the artist, right? And how it's going to be received is how it's going to be received, right? It's not up to me. I can't control that. But if it makes me happy and I'm happy with it, then it's art and it's my art, and it's a beautiful thing. So I appreciate you, Benjamin. I'm happy to have met you, and I look forward to the many more tracks that you're going to put out and reels, and keep doing what you're doing.
Likewise, man. God bless you. God bless your platform. And one day and one pot at a time, we can do this.
Thanks for listening. Please help us grow the channel and like, share, and subscribe for more content. The discussions and stories shared on this podcast are for informational and motivational purposes only. This content is not a substitute for professional medical advice, addiction treatment, or therapy. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please consult a licensed physician, addiction specialist, or mental health professional. You are no longer alone.